Hello again and welcome to Mordian Mondays, episode 11. For those of you that are new to this series, quick introduction. Mordian Mondays are where I document my progress on the Great Mordian Restoration Project, which is my ongoing painting project to completely repaint my pure infantry Mordian army. It's about 300, 400 models, all of which need repainting. Because they're in a very sorry state. I've had my Mordians for 15, I think it's 10 years when I've been pretty much pure Mordians, but I've had Mordian models for longer than that. And they've been in a bad state, and I've painted them badly, and I've not looked after them well, and so I'm finally, the poster army of the channel is being restored to its former glory. And so what I do in this series of videos is I document what I've been working on, hobby progress, any sort of abstract tactics, thoughts I've been thinking about during the week, any progressions on the lore and fluff around the Mordian 50th Rifles, because there's quite a deep headcanon, deep fluff regarding my regiment, which I share bit by bit over the weeks. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for you guys to pick up some tactics and some hobby thoughts and some painting thoughts as well, and also to do your own hobby progress whilst you're listening. I know a lot of people have been finding these videos very motivational to get their own hobby progress done, and that's what we need to be doing, guys, because having big backlogs of grey plastic is not what the Emperor wants. The Emperor wants us to be churning our units out fully painted onto the tabletop and to represent the Imperial Guard the best that we can. So, what have I been working on this week? Well, I have been working on my Ogrin conversions. Now, sadly, I thought I'd had all these guys built and painted in a week, and that's not the case. I am almost exactly halfway through. So, of the 6 Ogrins that I have converted, I have 2 which are fully painted, 2 and washed, 2 which are fully painted but don't have any washes on, and 2 which are pretty much unpainted. They've just got the base coat and the green on them. So I'm going to be going through a bit pardon me, I'm going to go through a bit more detail on what I've done on these Ogrins basically, and how I found painting them. So the conversion process, for those of you that don't know, is these models are based on the Age of Sigmar ogres. Just the basic ogres, not the Iron Guts or the Lead Belch or anything like that, just basic ogres. And the reason I went for those is because you get 6 in a box. And 6 in a box, about £23, 25, I think it's £23.50, although with recent price changes that may have gone up, but it was £23.50 when I bought the box. And I used leftover Ogrin bits. Now I know a lot of people will be saying, well, if you're using Ogrin bits from the Ogrin box set, why not just build those as Ogrins? But what I've found typically is that I have built my own Bulgrins, and that's what you should use the kit for. I have built my own Bulgrins, but I've got plenty of Ogrin bits left over. And also what I found, I actually only had enough Ogrin bits to build 4 conversions. What I found was that lots of people who had built Bulgrins had Ogrin bits left over, and they were willing to just give them away. So fortunately, I had a friend who just gave me 8 Ripper guns and various bits and bobs. So that's what I've done. I've used the Ogrin bits and mashed it with the Age of Sigmar ogre bits, ogres to create these models, and it's worked out very nicely. Hopefully, you can see. So I think these guys are sufficiently 40k'd enough to pass. The only thing I'm unhappy with the conversion is the fact that all the models are, wielding their Ripper guns single-handedly, which, ogres are strong, but I don't think they could realistically wield their Ripper guns effectively one-handedly. But you could definitely get round this by using things like lead belchers. You would obviously be paying, £23.50 and only getting 4 models. That's still a better deal than buying the actual, Ogrin/Bulgrin kit, because that's £35 for 3. So you're still well in the black if you if you if you buy the lead belcher kit, for example, and I think that would allow you to field some really cool conversions. For my second lot, I may get a box of lead belchers, very much so for my second squad, because the lead belchers they wield their cannons. Those that don't know, lead belchers are from their Age of Sigmar models that they're basically ogres that are wielding cannons. They've just got cannons, I think that would work. I would just replace the cannons with the ripper guns, and I think that would convert across quite nicely and quite easily. So what did I find when converting these models? I found it was a really simple conversion, actually. To be honest, the only change that I have done is I've done a hand swap. Every other main part of the body that you see, the belly plate, the spiky fist arm, that is just normal Age of Sigmar bits. I didn't need to do any of that. So the conversion is actually really simple, and it's just a hand swap. I literally chop the hand off of an ogre model, ogre arm with a sword, or it's big. Basically, it was actually a cleaver, and then just got the ripper gun arm and pretty much stuck it straight on. There was a little bit of chopping I had to do, but very little, guys. It's an extremely easy conversion. And then I just got some 40k bits and stuck them on. So I had some Aquillas that you could find in the Scion kit that I meant for like the regimental standard. I stuck those in the belly plate, and the Ogren kit itself does come with the shoulder pads, so I stuck those on. And round the back, I just stuck some grenades and pouches on. That's all that it required. The hats are made from green stuff, really easily done. And whilst I'm not a green stuff master, and I'm sure someone could do these hats a lot better than I can. For me, it didn't really matter that the hats were a little rough, because I justified it by saying, well, the Ogrins aren't really, they're going to try, but they're not really going to be able to keep their hats in the best condition that the that regular Mordians would be able to. So they try their best. So the fluff behind, so that's the modelling side of things. The painting side of things, guys, you can see it's a relatively simple paint scheme. It's a very simple paint scheme. I will say it does take a surprisingly long amount of time to paint these guys. Okay, they're not quick. Okay, I don't use an airbrush, man. I do mine. I'm very old school. I just use paintbrush. Pardon me. So I just use a paintbrush. I do find that these guys take a little longer to paint because they're really big. They are massive in comparison to a normal Mordian. I mean, we're talking, I would say 3 times the size, easily, at least double, 3 times the size. So imagine when you're looking at one of these guys, you're actually looking at the equivalent of painting 3 Mordians. Or 3 regular Cadian infantry. Okay, so you have to bear that in mind. You also have to, and because the models, and this is just what I found, and maybe the science behind this doesn't exactly make sense, but what I found was I was having to do 3 thin coats on these guys, not the usual 2 thin coats which I do on my infantry, because of the bigger models. Just the way the paint was drying, and I used a lighter base coat on this. I used the new grey sear, is it? It's not white. I've got it here. Yes, I used the new grey sear undercoat, which I have to say, grey sear undercoat is absolutely fantastic. It's one. I don't know what the new formula is that they're using in that new Citadel spray paint, but it's really, really good. Highly recommend grey sear. But because of a combination of a larger surface area and a lighter base coat, I was having to do 3 base coats per guy, or 3 thin coats per guy. So it did take a while. For those of you that are curious, what I did for washes, what I like to do, I know I use for the green. I believe it's Caliban green, which it's like Dark Angels green. And what a lot of Dark Angels players say is you should wash that in Norn oil. Now, I haven't done that on my Mordians, simply because what I found is it makes the green go very dark, and it's already a very dark green. Like it looks almost black in low light situations, which is going to be interesting for when I do battle reports in the future. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So what I actually wash it in is Bell Tan green, which seems unusual, but what I actually find, the Bell Tan green, it does go into little cracks and crevices, so it still looks nice and washed. But what it does is it actually makes the Caliban green look more green and less black. So that's what I did on the green there. The blue is very simply McCrag blue washed with Drakenhof Nightshade, pretty standard. The silver, I use Ironbreaker. I find I like to use Ironbreaker because the rest of the model's quite dark, and so I want at least some part of the model to pop. So I use Ironbreaker on all the weapons. The shells, I use Brass Scorpion. The gold is Genna Gold. And the skin colour I use is Cadian Flesh Tone with a heavy wash of Seraphim Sepia. I had a question last week, because in my army it's about a third of all the models in my army are coloured. They're black people. There's fluff behind that to represent that my regiment is mashed together from loads of different worlds. Someone said they've been really struggling to paint black skin colour, so I actually have a really, really simple method. All my painting, I'm not a master painter, and all my painting methods are really, really simple. And what I use is Gorthor Brown, Games Workshop Gorthor Brown. I do that over a dark base coat. So I base coat a lot of my models in Caliban green, which I don't think they sell anymore, but you can buy Dark Angels green or Angels green from Army Paint, which is the same thing. But Abaddon Black or Chaos Black spray paint would do the same thing. But I do a dark base coat, then a couple of thin layers of Gorthor Brown, and then I wash that skin colour in Norn oil. And I've actually found that brings out a really, really nice dark skin colour. So if anyone wants to paint their models or have a mixed regiment like that, that's my technique for doing it. Don't know if it's the best one, but I found it worked very nicely on my models. Again, all my paint techniques, my painting is like my play style. It's just slow, consistent, simple. Just don't overcomplicate it, and just that way you can churn the models out. I'll never be able to teach you guys here or pass on any paint techniques to become a really good painter, but I can definitely pass on some techniques on how to paint quite quickly. I mean, I'm able to churn. Without an airbrush, I'm able to churn out a squad of guys a week, a squad of regular infantry, should say, a week, nearly every week, without any problems, which is quite good. It's not the best. There's people which can paint much faster than that, but it's pretty good considering I've got full-time job and other hobbies and whatnot. So yeah, but I think I will do in some painted videos going forward. Pull out some speed tactics. How do I batch paint? Do I batch painting in what numbers of guys do I do at a time, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's all sort of the painting and hobbying side of things. Now, on to the sort of fluff side of things. It's also the tactic side of things. So, those of you that know, have been following the channel for a while, you guys know that my favourite Stormtrooper models are the old school 2nd edition Stormtroopers, and I absolutely love them. And I've recently been, bit by bit, slowly but surely, building up quite a chunk of these guys, and also thanks to some kind donations from subscribers and whatnot, I've managed to get a few together. So absolutely, thank you to those guys. Of course, thank you to the people that have sent me some of them. That's absolutely fantastic. And as a result of a few purchases and a few donations, I've actually got quite a decent force. I love them. I wish I could have all of them in the world. I absolutely love those 2nd Ed Stormtroopers. But what I've been trying to do is I'm getting these Stormtroopers, but I want to use them in my pure infantry army. So what I've been thinking is how can we justify this tactically and in the fluff of my regiment. So this is what I've got, right? So tactically speaking, what I would run these stormtroopers as is Death Corps of Krieg Grenadiers. Okay, because that really fits in with the fluff I'm going to be going for, and I think fits in with the tactics of the army. So what I want to do is I wanted to have. What I realised, if I was going to start taking scions or scion equivalent, I'd have to take them in a separate detachment, really. And each scion squad takes up a troop slot, and each troop slot is normally dedicated to an infantry squad. And I normally run 3 battalions, which means I normally run 18 infantry squads, which means I normally run 180 line infantry. Now, if I have to lose a battalion, that means I'm only running 120 line infantry, which isn't really going to get me very far. Not in a pure infantry army. I'm not going to get halfway up the field. I'll lose that over 2-3 turns. So what I realise is if I'm going to be taking scions, I need to be taking them in numbers. It's like 60. I need to be taking 60 scions. And I can't be taking 5-man squads. Because again, if I'm taking each one of those 5-man squads is taking up half the bodies I need on the field. It's all about numbers on the field. Because what I realise is once I hit 18 squads, I think I mentioned it in a previous video, but when I hit my 18 squads of infantry, the units I start buying after that are almost like add-ons. They're not necessarily the best points of investment. Like command squads, I mentioned this when I was talking about the ogres last week. Like command squads or special weapons squads, they do okay and they're all right and they do contribute, but pardon me, they're not really adding to the main bodies of men. And so what I realised is what if I take 120 good men, like normal infantry, and then I take 60 like specialists, but also like line infantry bodies assaulting aggressive units. So I figured the best way to do that is to essentially upgrade, riflemen into grenadiers. So I hope this is all making sense. This is all free forming. I know I'm rambling a little bit. This is all free forming in my head now. I'm still piecing it together how I want to do it. And I thought, well, that makes sense. So rather than taking like 180 line infantry and then a few command squads, a few special weapons squads, blah blah blah, just take 180 like the best infantry that I can. Upgrade infantry, so I'm taking 180 line infantry inverted commas, and some of them are almost like upgraded line infantry. So originally I thought about taking scions for this, right? But I realised that scions are 9 points a model, and I'm not really going to want to deep strike them in, because if I may change my mind, I very well may change my mind, but I don't really want to deep strike them in, because that means they're never going to deep strike into rapid fire range. It means that the first turn of the game, my line infantry, my regular guardsmen are going to get creamed. They're going to take the brunt of the firepower. And so I want these guys to be leading the charge. And if they all die, then over the course of 3 turns, then that's absolutely fine. If they all die over 3 turns, it's absolutely fine. As long as the guys behind them are able to push forward and seal the deal. So I thought, well, why not save myself a point per guy? Because Death Corps of Krieg Grenadiers are 8 points a guy. So I thought, why not save myself a point per guy? And what that essentially means is the special weapons I can put in the squads are almost free. They're almost free because so that's what I'm doing. So I'm running basically at the minute. I'm running 60. Death Corps of Krieg in inverted commas, Grenadiers. Now, how do I justify this in the fluff of my regiment? So, what it is essentially, those of you that have been following the developing fluff of the regiment, which of the Mordian rifles, is they were very pure of heart, and then over editions, I started including more and more psychers and other things. And essentially what's happened is the ecclesiarchy has come along and said, no, we're not having any of that. No more psychers. You need to be purified. Because I used to use a lot of priests, and I stopped using priests and started using psychers instead. And the ecclesiarchy basically wrested back control of the regiment and said, no, we're going back to the way you guys need to go on a penitent crusade. You've been using too many psychers. You've become suspect. The only way to prove yourselves loyal to the emperor is to go on almost on a penitent crusade. So that's what's been happening. Now the commissars attached to the regiment, obviously they kind of need to go along with this, okay, because they can't start going against the church. Because no matter how powerful, no matter how much of a political officer a commissar may be, the church, the ecclesiarchy, the cult of the emperor, they're probably one of the few people that can get a commissar disappeared, or one of the few people that can do that, because both of those organisations sit outside the normal chain of command. The commissars have no jurisdiction whatsoever over the ecclesiarchy, but the ecclesiarchy has jurisdiction over all men, all faithful. So there's kind of like the in my regiment, the ecclesiarchy and the commissariat, they're kind of pretending to be both best friends, but each one has got a knife hidden behind its back, because the commissariat doesn't want to, wants to, show that it's working to bring the regiment back into the faithful, but there's always politics in the Imperium, and so the ecclesiarchy brought along with them some Ogrins. Because Ogrins are extremely faithful and will do as they are told to the letter. And at first, the Mordians didn't really like auxiliaries, but they acknowledge their usefulness and have seen their obedience, and discipline, which is what Mordians value above all else. But the commissars sort of saw this in a different light. Okay, the commissars saw this in a different light, which is the ecclesiarchy have kind of got this private section of the regiment, which will do what the ecclesiarchy tells them to do. They'll follow orders in general, but they will follow the order of the priest. And the commissar don't really like the idea of the ecclesiarchy almost having a private force within the regiment. Now, who's to say Ogrins aren't the cleverest of people? Whilst the ecclesiarchy may have requested them from Departmentum Militarum and had brought them along and encouraged them to be included in the regiment, Ogres will tend to follow orders of the senior officer. So there's a good chance that that these Ogres will just do as they're told by anyone, by the commissars, by the senior officers, by the priests. They'll just do as they're told. But the commissars don't want to take that risk, so they want their own force that they can call upon. That they can have at their beck and call. Okay. Now, so the commissar started thinking, well, how can we get this going? How can these men will always be more loyal to their regiment. They'll always be more loyal to the regiment. And the commissars can't exactly requisition Tempestus Scions to be, a proper Militarum Tempestus Scions to always be stationed with the more than 50 rifles. That's not how it works. Scions go where they're needed, and they do very specific missions. So what the commissars did is they took a leaf out of the Cadians' book. Now, in my regiment, it's a mix to get around the fact that half my models are Cadian, half my models are Mordians. The fluff is that, my regiment is basically made up of. It was originally a pure Mordian regiment, but as they took battlefield casualties, they picked up other regiments along the way, and especially with the shattering of Cadia, they've picked up a lot of Cadian refugees. And Cadians and Mordians kind of got on quite well, because whilst the Cadians think the Mordians are a bit stuck up, they recognise that they're extremely well, good soldiers and well disciplined. So the Cadians have it's a merged regiment of Cadians and Mordians. And obviously Cadians have Kazakin, which are not like normal stormtroopers. They are troopers which have risen through the ranks, and They are basically elite Cadian shock troopers. So what the commissars have done, have gone, right, well, we've got some Kazakin in the regiment. I've had Kazakin with my army forever, by the way. The first model I ever bought was a squad of 10 Kazakin. So the commissars are like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take that part of the Cadian combat doctrine, which is really effective, and we're going to use it, and we're going to basically, and these are going to be called Stormtroopers. They're not Militarm Tempestus, they're not Kazakin. These are old school Stormtroopers, and in my army it kind of fits with the Mordian theme as well, because they're Prussian, sort of German. This is like World War I Stormtrooper tactics, where the best, most aggressive, hardest motherfuckers in the army got taken to one side and put into special Stormtrooper units who were designed for assaulting lines and clearing out some of the most heavily defended parts on the Western Front. And that's what my Stormtroopers do, which is why I use the Death Corps of Krieg Grenadiers, because that's what they really do represent World War I Stormtroopers really, really well. And so that's what it is. It's the Stormtrooper Corps in my army. That's basically what it is. It's the Grenadier Corps, it's the Stormtrooper Corps, it's the Kazakh. Basically, and what I'm doing is I'm making like Mordian Kazakin. And so that's how I justify it in the army. And of course, the commissars say, well, we came from the Scholar Progenium, where proper Tempestus Scions are created. So we will oversee the formation of this detachment. And these guys are kind of like, they're like the RDT, they're like the Stormtroopers. They are elite shock troops in the literal sense, in the traditional sense. So that's it. So the regiment's going. So it's going to be a full battalion of 60 Death Corps of Krieg Stormtroopers, Grenadiers, which I will use the old school Stormtrooper models for, and I'll use. And so how I'm building the squads is, for every 10 regular Stormtroopers that I have one or two metal Kazakin in the squad as well. And what that represents is the Kazakin are like, they're going to represent the sergeants, the squad leaders, and they're basically they're leading the Stormtroopers. Because what the Commissariat has been able, they haven't been able to requisition the best Militarm Tempestus Scion kit, because that goes to the Tempestus Scions. But what they are able to get their hands on is some older equipment, older issue Stormtrooper equipment. That's what they've managed to get to pull the strings behind, behind the curtain, and they've been able to requisition that from Departmentum Minatorum, and that's what they've been building up basically. So that is, I know it's two big bits, of, we've got a big painting bit and a big fluff bit there as well. But I think it is really, really cool. What do you guys think? Do you like this storyline I'm going with the Mordian 50th Rifles? There's like the shadow proxy war between the Ecclesiarchy and the Commissariat going on behind the backs, and all the Mordians want to do is just get on and do the fighting. But that's why. But it's not. This is not the main focus of the regiment at all. You've got to understand that, I'm not going to use those Grenadiers, those Stormtroopers, every single game. Sometimes I'll only use a few of them. And I'm not going to use my Ogryns every single game either. So, we'll just have to see. I think it's one of those where we just see how it plays out. But I do quite like the idea of having this elite Stormtrooper Grenadier Corps, line break corps in my army. Now, tactically and list-wise, how do I see this playing out? Well, like I said, I see this, and I've done a very rough points calculation of this, but I think I can do this. I'm looking at having 2 big assault platoons. So 60 men, melters, flamers, power swords, priests, the whole lot, in each one. We've covered these in a few videos now, so you guys know what I'm talking about. It's a battalion, 6 infantry squads, flamers, melters, power swords, priest, Lord Commissar, company commander, platoon commander. Have 2 of those. Then have my Grenadier Corps, my Stormtrooper Corps, 60 Grenadiers. They're going to have So they're going to have a couple of officers with them as well to make sure that they can get all the orders they need to get. And then we're going to have, I thought would be a really good way of me getting to use my medic models again. I was going to have a quartermaster. For those that don't know what the quartermaster does, it gives all Deathcore Krieg models 6+ feel no pain. So I was going to have essentially a commissar with 2 of the Cadian medic models following him around and have that as the quartermaster retinue. And then I actually have loads of points left over, and I was thinking I could have either 2 blocks of Ogrin, 2 big blocks of Ogrin, or I could go for a full Bulgrin star. And I think tactically that'll work out quite nicely, because I'll have the Bulgrin/Ogres, which are going to draw a lot of firepower. Bulgrins are really hardcore. The only reason I'm hesitant to use Bulgrins is because I'm trying to stick with the fluff of the regiment, which is no Psychers, and without Psychers, Bulgrins aren't that great. So I was thinking maybe take a load of Ogrins, and the Ogrins will hopefully, they'll big, horrible, close combat monsters which are going to go forward, draw a lot of firepower. If that doesn't work out, I'll swap out to Bulgrins, and because Bulgrins, everyone knows what Bulgrins do, so they're more likely to get targeted. People might not target the Ogrins if they're not really aware of what they do. And then behind, the first wave is going to be my hardcore shit. It's going to be, maybe 9 fully tricked out Bulgrins or 12, 18 Ogrins. I don't know. It's going to be a huge amount of Ogrins going at the enemy. Also, there's going to be like 60 Grenadiers, Stormtroopers going at the enemy. They're going to be first turn. That every single time I use them first turn, those guys are going to be moving, getting really into the enemy's face, aggression, assaulting, and moving up behind that is going to be the 120 line infantry. Those guys are going to be laying down sheets of fire, moving first rank fire, second rank fire, moving first rank fire, second rank fire, moving forward. And so whilst the enemy is busy dealing with the heavy hitters, the Ogrins/Bulgrins and the Grenadiers, and the Grenadiers are all going to have things like, plasma, melter, they're going to get what they need. They're going to really be getting into the enemy's faces. They're going to be assaulting them. I mean, I can get 2 attacks per guy. They're going to be hitting on 3s in close combat, power weapons. It's all going to work really well. And so whilst the enemy is dealing with that first initial heavy wave, behind that becomes the next wave, the second wave, another 60, 120 infantry. And that's just going to keep crashing against them. And maybe it'll work, but because I won't have any. The reason I quite like this tactic is it's all out aggression. Okay, I was looking at having sort of half assault, half fire support on my infantry, and I want to just try out full on in your face attacking. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't, but I want to give it a go. And that's the thought behind these Stormtroopers, the thought behind these Ogrins. What does a hyper aggressive combat guard army look like, and can it win games? Now at the moment it's all theory, but I've almost got 750 points of my Mordians painted up, and there's a group of friends that I play with that do 750 points sort of mini one-day tournaments. It's like 6 of us, and we all play each other in the course of one day. And I think that will be where I first get an idea of how these tactics are going to work. Anyway, it's quite a long video, guys. We've covered a lot here. We've covered fluff. We've covered enough for like 2 or 3 videos. We've covered fluff. We've covered painting. We've covered tactics. Please put all your comments and thoughts down below, as always. Tell me what your hobby progress has been. I know a lot of you have been finding it really motivational to sort of document your hobby progress and my hobby progress. So, please put that down in the comments below. Let me know what you think about my Stormtrooper tactics. Let me know what you think about the fluff behind the Stormtrooper tactics. Do you think it's a little too deep, a little too cloak and dagger, or is it pretty 40k? And if you've got any suggestions for how I could refine it, how I could distill it, please put it down in the comment section below. I'm always looking for inspiration for fluff and for headcanon. So hope you, and of course, if any of you guys have got any fluff or headcanon that you've been working on recently, bang it down in the comments below. This is what Mordian Mondays is all about. It's about kicking back, similar to how Black Templar Friday used to be. It's about kicking back, doing some hobby progress, doing some stream of consciousness stuff, doing some fluff. Let me know what you think. So thank you for listening, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. And of course, I'll see you guys next time.